let me give you some material that you can use as a conversation starter, well, or killer depending on the circumstances. When people learn about my specialization in the economics of commercial aviation, one of the things they wonder about is how much it costs an airline to fly an aircraft from point A to point B. Now, perhaps you have wondered about it yourself when sitting on board an aircraft. Have you asked yourself a question like, oh, I paid only 50 euros for my tickets, so how can the airline make money on this flight? Or how much does it actually cost to fly this thing? Let me try to shed some light on this. Of course, there is a lot of variability in the cost of a flight, even if we are talking about the same aircraft type flying between the same two cities. Load factors, weather, differences in labor costs across the airlines, these are just some of the factors at play here. For example, a paper published in 2018 by the International Council on Clean Transportation demonstrated that on the transatlantic routes in 2017, airlines' fuel economy ranged from 27 to 44 passenger kilometers per liter. Yet we can think about a simple way to give rough estimates for the cost of a flight. And our rough estimation method will need three inputs: flight duration in hours, aircraft fuel consumption per hour in tons, and price of jet fuel per ton. So here are some indicative numbers for the fuel consumption for the most popular aircraft types. A Boeing 737 or an Airbus A320 consume about 2.5 tons of fuel per flight hour. The newest generation Dreamliners, well, it depends on capacity. A smaller 787-8 consumes about 5 tons. For the larger 787-9, the figure is close to 5.5 tons. And Airbus A350-900 consumes slightly more than a 787-9. Well, it is a larger capacity plane, of course. About 5.8 tons of fuel per hour. For the largest planes in the airline's fleet, the figures you can use are 7.5 tons per hour for a Boeing 737-300 and a whopping 12 tons per hour for the largest of them all, an Airbus 380. This works out to over 33 kilograms of fuel consumed every second. Just compare this to the capacity of your car's fuel tank. The current jet fuel price, as of the time of this recording, is about $1,250 per metric ton. Of course, we are now in the period of abnormally high fuel costs due to the global instability caused by, in large part, by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In my conversations on the topic of flight costs, I tend to use $1,000 per ton as the approximation of the jet fuel price. Makes it much easier to do calculations in my head. So, we now have all the information we need to approximate fuel cost of a flight. Let us take an example of a 10-hour flight, say London to Los Angeles. A Boeing 787-8 aircraft will consume about 50 tons of jet fuel on that flight. At the price of $1,000 per ton, the total fuel cost will be $50,000. It will be about $60,000 at the current higher prices. So, we have an estimate of the fuel cost, but what about the full cost of this flight? This is where I use the stylized fact I mentioned in the previous module, that the fuel bill is about 1/4 to 1/3 of an airline's total cost of operation, on average. I usually just multiply the fuel cost by 3 to give my estimate of the total cost of the flight. So coming back to our example of a Dreamliner flying from London and Los Angeles, my estimate of the total cost of this flight comes up to $150,000. This is, of course, a very imprecise approximation. I usually give a range rather than the single number when answering the question about the flight costs, such as, well, on average, I would say that to fly a Dreamliner from London to Los Angeles will cost the airline about $150,000, but it could be as low as $120,000 or as high as $180,000. You might have noticed that I have obtained the range of costs by just adding 20% on either side of the estimated average cost. One way to check whether this cost is reasonable is to evaluate the flight cost per seat. So for instance, British Airways configures its Boeing 787-8 aircraft to carry 214 passengers across 3 classes of service, which is business, premium economy, and economy. This means that the average cost of $150,000 for the 10-hour flight comes up to about $700 per seat. A quick search on the British Airways website shows that airfares for round-trip journeys between London and Los Angeles on direct flights during the summer range from about $1,000 plus government-imposed taxes for the cheapest economy class ticket, all the way to about $6,000 for a trip in business class, again excluding government-imposed taxes, duties, and fees. As you would expect, the cheapest economy class ticket may not cover the average cost of transporting such a passenger. However, a ticket in the business class more than makes up for it.